we're going.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here. We've got a little bit of a special podcast going on this evening or this afternoon. My name is Rich Winter, and joining me is Greg Kahler from Sacred Hoops. The topic of today is anxiety, depression, and even kind of teenage suicide. One of the real big things when high school sports were canceled like 3 weeks ago, immediately that sent a ripple effect through every staff member of Sacred Hoops. And we were really conscious of some of those things and really aware and wanted to do some things to help. And right away, Greg, when we started talking about this as an organization, that message kind of spoke to you, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The thing that always it just popped in my head right away is I am fortunate and blessed to be able to work with a lot of athletes in the area around Sioux Falls. And a lot of those athletes were going to be making their trips to state, and they were excited about it. And so I was excited just to go and just be a fan for a weekend and watch them succeed on the big stage. And so, when that got taken away from them, I just felt a sincere, feeling in me that I just felt bad. I just felt bad for all of them.
Greg, before we jump into the bulk and the heart of our meeting here, I wanted to ask you, without divulging too much, but you had somebody call you, kind of reach out of the blue. I think it was a 14-year-old young man who was really struggling, and you spent like an hour with him. What was kind of the gist of some of the things you talked about with a young man?
Kind of the story was there was a kid from West River who I've never even been in the gym with, but he reached out to me and basically just was explaining that he just was struggling with life. And obviously we all are right now because everything's just a little bit different and we're out of our normal. And it was a hard conversation for me to have because I really just don't know anything about the kid's life. I don't know what home life looks like. I don't know what his day looks like. I just told him that there's so much good in this world that he can be appreciative of and that he can be seeing. He's just not seeing right now. And I wasn't going to hang up that phone at any moment until I was sure that he was okay.
I was telling you before we started our meeting here, I was a little nervous to do this. Sometimes, when we start talking about things like suicide, depression, anxiety, and things like that, it just feels like everybody closes their mind. But you kind of reassured me there, and I kind of feel like, if we can reach somebody, anybody, one person,
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the gist of it. And so I kind of wanted to jump into it, Greg. Not only, were you anxious to kind of talk about this with, some of the things going on with young people, the things they're experiencing and feeling in these unheard of times, but for you, it really resonated, and you wanted to share some of your stories, some of the things that you've had to deal with as a young man that's, just a couple of years out of high school.
Yeah, I mean, everyone goes through they battle their own demons, and I think that, and I still go through it today, and I think that just one of the things that really always gets to me is just hearing true stories, just hearing, those realistic things to relate to. And it's something that it used to be hard for me to talk about, but I mean, I've moved on past it, and I couldn't be happier where I'm at in my life. And so everything that I'm about to really talk about doesn't paint a picture of who I am today. We all go through being bullied. And unfortunately, obviously today's bullying is a little bit different than what it was probably when you were in high school and middle school. It's more, obviously we have the use of cyberbullying now, which is becoming more of an issue. And then the mental abuse side of things, the psychological side of things.
Greg, I wanted to ask you about a little bit the bullying aspect of things. I think you've talked about that a little bit in open conversation with us, but when did bullying start for you, and how did that affect you? How did it make you feel and such?
I think I've had multiple conversations with a lot of different people about this. I think that bullying is more prone to happen in your middle school years. Elementary school, you're just a young kid flying around having fun, screwing around, getting in trouble. When you get to middle school, that's when you really start to mature. And either some people mature faster than others, and some people get left behind. And it's really just, you start to split off in your own little groups. And that's when the fingers start to get pointed at people. And unfortunately, the fingers were pointed at me. And looking
How
back,
come? Why were the fingers pointed at you?
I really wish I could give an explanation. To this day, I still don't know why. You know, I come from I was raised right. In my opinion, I had two parents who loved me and cared about me, and I think that they raised me the right way to always be respectful and to have high character. And you would never see me talk down on anybody. And I think it was just that knowing that I probably wasn't going to retaliate in any form of way that made me a target. Um, that's kind of just what I've led myself to believe. You asked how I kind of went through it. I didn't go through it very well. Um, to the point where I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to wake up in the morning and go and deal with that abuse on a day to day. And what I ended up doing is, and this is wrong, is I ended up just burying all of those feelings deep. And I think for mostly for boys and men in the masculine side of things, we are told that we cannot express ourselves. We need to bury these feelings and frustrations and just don't let them out. Well, that ate away at me daily. It was hard. It was hard to go. And the thing is, the typical thing is, I mean, you put on a mask, and I was the same way. As kids are the same way today. You put on a mask of what you actually are and who you actually are, and unfortunately, I just wanted to be accepted by my peers, and so I really started changing who I was, even though I knew that wasn't who I am. And then I would get home and I would be upset or frustrated and angry, and I would hide it, and my parents wouldn't know the wiser. And I talked to my mom about it yesterday, and I just basically asked, like, did you see any signs with me? And she said, well, of course we saw. I mean, every parent's going to see signs, but I was good at hiding it. You walk in, hey, how was school today? Good. You have any homework? No. And that's the end of the conversation. Like, that's just the prototypical kid. Um, when I was about in seventh grade, there was just a day where I just told myself I had had enough. And it was late at night, and I almost went through with throwing it all away. So that's kind of the life that I lived in. And yeah, go ahead.
Greg, when you talk about something like that, can you recall, like, exactly, I don't know, not necessarily what led up to that, but like, what were your feelings like as you got closer to that, like, thinking about this, like, how
Yeah,
dark of a place were you in there for a minute?
I was at rock bottom. And the thing about it is that I was overcome with a wave of emotion and negativity. And that's something that I'm going to get into a little later, is about the effects of negativity. But it was just like a tidal wave just came over me of just everything dark. I wasn't thinking about my family. I wasn't thinking about the friends who actually cared about me. I wasn't thinking about any of that. And I think that it's easy for us to not think about any of that going through tough times. And I was very close, and I just kept on asking questions like, would I even be missed? And what ultimately just kind of pulled me away from it was thinking of my family at the very last second, and thinking I can throw it all away, or I can really start making a change in other people's lives so that they don't have to go through the same thing that I do, or I did in this matter.
Kind of, and I don't know what that was. Sorry. Kind of on the back end of that, when you're talking about how you like get through that, how did you like start to feel better within the first couple of days of reaching that absolute rock bottom? What did you do? Who did you talk to?
Well, actually, Rich, I didn't do anything. I just went back to living the same life. Um, and that was, like I said, I was about in seventh grade. Um, and I still I didn't even tell anybody that I almost went through with that until probably another year later. And I just had I just had a day like that again, where just things weren't weren't going great. And I was in class and I was being ridiculed and picked on, and I just had enough, and I had a little spaz attack, and my teacher held me back after class, and he just asked me what's wrong, and I just told him. I just felt like I could trust him, and he was a great teacher, and I just believed that I could tell him, and then after that, things just kind of started to change, and that was that. A little down the road, I basically had a conversation with my parents about moving schools to get away from that, to get away from the negativity. And after that, I completely redefined who I was and stopped caring about the opinions of others and just focus on the people who are actually meaningful to me. And after I moved, life just turned around for me.
So you
Yep, I moved schools. Yep, I moved schools. I went from middle school to a completely different high school. So,
one thing, when we start talking about anxiety, depression, and feelings like that is, they're just, kids don't often talk to their parent. You even said you came in and they said, "How was school?" You said, "Good," and you move on to the next thing. How beneficial was it to just talk to somebody, to that middle school teacher you're talking about? How I don't know, kind of a warm hug did that man give you to kind of acknowledge what you were going through?
it felt like the weight of the world was lifted off of my shoulders. I mean, that's really the only way that I can describe it, is just you're just being pushed down, bogged down by everything going on, and finally just releasing that to somebody just felt freeing.
So after you said you moved to a new high school, kind of redefined who you were, and did you have problems with depression?
I still do. I mean, that's not something that ever is going to leave you. I still go through anxiety and depression symptoms. It just really depends on the day. I guess I'm just older now, and I've done a lot of studying and reading into it and how I can move past it. And that's kind of just how I get through it, as I just know how I can beat it if I'm having a poor day. And I actually, something that I'll get into is the habits that I have on a day-to-day basis. I start my mornings in a routine that ultimately I believe leads me to a more successful and productive day, which ends up creating more happiness for me.
For you, what's the starting a morning look like?
So you actually, a lot of people aren't going to really think about anything like this. I actually start my mornings and I meditate, just being in silence. The first thing that people do when they wake up is they check their phone.
Sure.
They check their phone, and that's what's and I'm not gonna lie, my phone is captivating for me. I'm on it most of the day, but I just think if you're gonna wake up and you're gonna go out in the world for that day, you need to start by doing some self-reflection. And so that's how I'll start my day, and then I'll get into the basics that everybody goes through, and then we're off my day. And I haven't really been doing this lately, which I really should be getting back into now that I actually have the time. But a couple months ago, I actually started to journal my days. Just quick little hey, how was the day? If there was negativity in it, how can I find some good in this day? And that actually really started to open my eyes and give me a little bit more of a different perspective.
I wanted to ask you about anxiety. I think a lot of people deal with anxiety. Some really can identify it. Some it affects them physically. For you as a younger person, how does anxiety get to you? What are the feelings like when you're going through an anxiety-ridden moment or, afternoon or something?
See, for the younger generations, it's usually worry about the future. So you going through anxiety about a job or just, like a meeting that you're going to have, state basketball tournament coming up, a big game, big practice, player coach meeting, you just start to worry about the most minute details of things that are going to happen that you have absolutely no control over right now.
Do you feel like your mind gets sped up during that time when you're all anxious and you're thinking about things that need to be done and have to be blah, 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 blah?
You think about 100 different things that really won't even happen. honestly, you think about those tiny details that are a 1 in a million chances of actually happening.
What does depression feel like for you? Like what does it look like? How does it affect you physically, mentally? What does depression feel like?
I can't really answer that like how I am today, because I mean, you've been around me enough. You probably can just assume that I'm just the most outgoing, happy-go-lucky type dude, and truthfully I really am. I just don't see a reason to be negative anymore and to try and bring people down but I mean, everybody has bad days, and I guess I've just learned how to be more vocal about the way, if I really need help, I'm not afraid to go and talk to somebody anymore. And I used to be, whether that's a really, really good friend, whether if it's my parents. I still talk to my high school basketball coach all the time, about anything, just in general, whether it's coaching or basketball or training. Like, I still reach out and talk to him. I'll talk to anybody I really can, just to get different perspectives and get help. How it looks is you don't want to do anything.
Anything.
You really don't, and you feel like you can't achieve anything. And if I can just be honest about something, I'm no better than the kids who picked on me. In fact, I'm worse. And I'll tell you why. Because I didn't do anything for anyone else.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a true story, and it still weighs heavy on me today. Just the fact that I didn't do anything is, yes, I was a victim, but I was also a bystander. I was the person who watched somebody else get picked on. There was a kid in a wheelchair, Rich, and he loved football. He still does. Love football. And you can just tell that all he wanted to do was just play, but he couldn't. And there was just a day where a couple kids were picking on him and just said, "You'll never be able to play football. You'll never score a touchdown. You'll never throw a pass." And that kid started breaking down, crying in front of everybody. And I just stood there.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. And mostly in fear of what they would then turn on me and say. And I regret that almost every day, more than any other choice that I made for myself. I made the selfish decision by wanting to throw it all away, and I didn't do anything else for anybody. And so that's the thing that really just weighs heavy on me today.
Greg, we're going to get into negativity here in just a minute, and how negativity affects people. I just kind of wanted to, are you ready? Are you a junior in college? How far along are you, Dakota?
I am not in school right now. I'm taking a little break, thinking about the future right now. I finished 2 years of school so far.
I guess my question is, for somebody that's, a couple years out of high school and moving along, like, how would you have felt if the last 2 months of your senior year were just the rug was pulled out and it was canceled and you missed all of those things? What would that have felt like for you?
So when I was a senior in high school, we made it to state tournament, and it was the first time in a few years that we did. And I wasn't much of a player. I was the guy on the end of the bench waving the towel. But the thing about, and you probably heard me a couple times say that I loved that role, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I would have been heartbroken, because we worked so hard that season to get to that point. I mean, I think our end of the season, we won like 14 to 16 games in a row, just to, and it was for a good reason. And if I was in that situation, I don't know how I would react. I think that some kids are reacting well to it, and a lot of kids are actually still hurt by it. The fact that they don't get to compete and play for a championship, and they don't get to play with their teammates one last time. And I think about guys whose careers ended. Let's think about the college guys too. Guys like Ty Hoagland, who's a legend at Dakota Wesleyan. Guys like Gabe King, who has played in the most games in Northern State basketball history. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on about just dudes like that whose careers are now done, and they didn't even get to play in their last game knowing
I,
it.
I keep thinking of USD women, going, having
Yeah.
30 wins. So somebody like Chloe Lamb, a junior, or Sierra Benson, who was the mid-major player of the year. And I just, boy, I can't imagine the amount of work that some of those people have put in and how discouraging it's been. One thing I'll tell you, like, I've been doing a lot of senior spotlights and kind of reaching out to kids all over the state right now. And, some are missing track, some are devastated by prom not happening. A lot are worried about, is graduation going to happen? But I'll tell you, like, if you flat out ask them, to a man or a woman, they're going to look back and most of them say, I miss my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I miss my friends. That social part of high school where, you have a routine, you've been in a lot of cases K through 12 with some of these other people, and all of a sudden you're unsure if you're ever going to meet again as a group. And I just think there's a lot of stress going on across the state right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, anyone that I talk to, I'm not a big advocate for relationships in high school just because you go on to college and you meet a lot of different people. But obviously, there are some people who have their relationships in high school, and you can't go and see boyfriend, girlfriend right now, and that's hard for people. I think that the way that like even somebody like me and kids are taking it is life as we know it has been taken away from us.
Right.
And what the thing that I worry about is I think about those people that before this even happened just decided that they were going to lose weight, or just decided that they were going to start that business, or just decided that they were going to start these new life-changing routines that now they can't do that, and now they're just sitting at home. And I also worry about those kids who are now sitting at home, playing video games all day, that were you thinking about working, or are now when we get out of this, are you going to be in a state of complacency where you just stop, you're just going to be the same as you were in quarantine?
I've been visiting with Alan, just keeping track of some things there. One of the things, like across a lot of reservations across South Dakota, there are all these high school kids that are getting ready to graduate, and a good number are going on to college and whatnot. But a good share of them, this is their moment in life. This is the biggest thing for some of them that's ever going to happen, is to graduate high school. And for so many families, that's such an important time and a celebration and this. And I mean, there's not enough help to go around with how worried I am about the kids across South Dakota right now.
Absolutely, for sure. I agree with you.
Let's jump into negativity and the negative spaces and how negativity affects people.
So I've done a lot of reading about this, believe it or not, and I am no expert in any of the things that we've talked about today, and so I don't want people to think that I am. I've just done my personal readings, and this is just like some things that I found out. People are very repulsive towards positivity, if you can understand what I'm saying. You're telling me to be positive, and I'm stuck in my house. You're telling me to be positive, but they just canceled state tournament. You're telling me to be positive, but I can't walk down graduation. You're telling me to be positive, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. I mean, you fill in the blank, you can name it. So, I mean, people are very repulsive towards positivity, and so it's easy for us to just kind of dwell on the negative. And so the thing that I've tried to just say or teach is to not think positive, don't think negative, but let's remain neutral.
There you go.
Because positivity is not going to work all the time. It's just a proven fact. But here's what I will tell you, and this is backed by science. Psychologists have studied this, is that if I say something out loud as opposed to thinking it, it has 10 times the power as thinking something. But negativity is more powerful than positivity. But in fact, negativity, if you say something out loud that is negative, it has an effect through that 10 times, about 4 to 7 times more powerful than something positive. But we're thinking about something that's 40 to 70 times more likely to happen if I say it out loud, if that makes sense to you.
That makes sense. Those are kind of crazy numbers to think about.
A lot of numbers. And actually, I've been doing a lot of reading on a lot of different stories, and it's crazy the data that you can find just on the effects of negativity and negative thinking. The thing something I read is negativity works 100% of the time, and it works negatively. And that's just the most like simplistic, phrase I've read, but it's like it's got power in it. It's got power behind it because it's true. Think of there used to be the sports blooper. I don't know, Rich, if you've ever heard of this man. He played for the Boston Red Sox. His name was Bill Buckner.
Oh yeah.
So there used to be an interview. It's one of the best sports bloopers in history. It was before the World Series, and he said, "I would hate to lose the series on a ground ball that rolled between my legs." And what happened is a guy hit a ground ball, and the ball rolled between his legs, and he lost the World Series because of it. And it was because he said, and I'm not saying that is, obviously tell all, but he said something like that out loud, and then it happened. Another example is Pistol Pete. At age 26, he was interviewed, and he said, "I would hate to play 10 years of professional basketball and die at 40 of a heart attack." He played 10 years of professional basketball, and he died at age 40 of a heart attack. Like that, those are true stories. You can look them up. I promise you. Like, go on Google and research it because it's there. It's just crazy what negative thinking can do for us. So are you familiar with like prisoner of war camps at all? Just a little bit?
Yeah.
So there are rules and regulations with POW camps, as we go to war with other countries. And during the Korean War, what these POW camps would do to American soldiers is they would actually lie to them. They would doctor newspaper articles saying that they bombed the United States. They wouldn't let them have mail come in or mail go out or anything like that. So what ended up happening is the negativity just like it hit a lot of these guys like a tidal wave. 1/3 of prisoner of war camp victims actually like died, and it's one of the most profound numbers in war history. And the reason why is because they use this negativity factor, the psychological warfare, as they call it, and these military men would actually just go sit in a corner and die of broken hearts because they were told lies and they believed them, and then it just overcame them. And it's just one of the craziest stories that I've ever read.
Greg, I wanted to ask you about negative spaces and stuff. Neither one of us is a clinician, and neither one of us is a psychologist or anything like that. But when you find yourself in a negative place or having negative thoughts, how do you kind of rearrange your mindset to get out of that space and get into a different space?
I know who I am. I know what I'm meant to be. And I just avoid negative people and negative situations. Many people have had to have heard this quote. I'm sure you have. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And I think that's so true. If I could kind of paint a picture from it, let's say you have one person who's extremely negative, and he's in a group of 5 positive people. That's his circle. That one person's going to end up acting the same way as those 5 people. But now let's switch it. Let's say we got 5 negative people and 1 positive person, and he's in that circle. He's going to end up acting the same way. He's going to end up acting negative. So who you associate with is crucial. If you have somebody who's constantly dragging you down, that's not somebody to be around. And I think that for young people, especially people my age, I'm fortunate enough to just have moved past this stage in my life. We crave attention. We crave being liked. We crave the notoriety. We want to see our names in the newspaper. We want to see X amount of likes on our Instagram posts. That's what we crave. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't. Think about those. I had on our Instagram live about a week ago, I had a speaker on. He travels the country and he speaks to people, and it's in our video on YouTube. And he said, think about, it's kind of a morbid thought is how he put it, but think about you're on your deathbed in the hospital. Think about the people who would be in that room with you. Now think about how many people don't even pay attention or think about those people that would be in that room, but are thinking about the people who aren't there. Most people are going to think about the people who aren't there. And that's just unfortunate, because we really need to learn how to appreciate and love the people who are in that room with us.
So, Greg, the other day, you sent me a YouTube video, and it was kind of a gentleman who had lost his son to suicide. and he was talking about with a group of men. I think also fathers maybe that had lost their children, and they were opening up a dialogue. And one of the things that really struck me about that was well, two things. One was that as males, we don't often talk about feelings and such. And the gentleman that was doing the video suggested that men grow most in that times where they're vulnerable. And the second part of that was he really talked about how parents should talk to their kids. Um, as you're just out of high school here a couple of years and still close enough to your parents to remember those kind of relationships. But I don't know if you had any advice, like to parents to get past those "how was school today?" good conversations and get into something a little bit more meaningful, and perhaps for parents to like be looking for signs and differences and stuff. Could you comment on that for us?
Yeah, I had this conversation with my mom yesterday because I kind of had a suspicion that we'll be talking about something like that. If you ask any of the players that I work with on a regular basis, I will reach out to them and I'll just ask, "How are you doing?" How many times have you asked that question and have actually just not really cared about the response that you're getting? You know what I mean? So I ask that question, "How are you doing?" They'll respond, "I'm good," or "I'm okay." And then I'll just like, "No, I'm not satisfied with that answer. You need to tell me, how are you?" And I think that there's a trust factor in that it actually shows that you care. And so I would say that for those parents that when their kid walks through the door, for me it was different because in my life I had 3 older siblings. I would get out of school and we would be off to a football game, basketball game, volleyball game, anywhere. We were just going. So we didn't really have time to just sit down and actually have conversations. So I would, if your kid is notorious at giving those one-word responses, be honest. Just say, "No, like I want to know how you are." Because that's not even just with your own kid, that's with anybody. It shows that you care. It shows that you have an investment in their life and in their happiness and in their future success.
So, Greg, we have taken a hoop for, I don't know, trying to come up with some ways to reach kids. And one of the things in our early part of our research and our conversations, I threw out, hey, we could provide hotline numbers. And you kind of retorted back with like, well, a kid would rather talk to a fence post than a complete stranger on a hotline like that. I mean, how personal is this issue to you? And like, what do you hope to give some of the kids across South Dakota in terms of a voice to hear or somebody to listen to their issues? How do you want to kind of go forward with this?
I just want anyone to know that's going through these types of things that it gets better. I mean, it really does. As you grow older, those people who try to rip you down, they don't mean anything to you anymore. And it's really how you just take life. I decided I no longer cared about the opinions of others. And it really just redefined the way that I thought and the way that I attacked my days. I know who's closest to me. I'm not going out there trying to befriend everybody. I don't need everybody to like me. I only need my family, my faith, and those closest people with me. That's what's most important to me. And it will be for the rest of my life. For anyone that's going through anything, I've put it out there a handful of times. If you just need to talk to somebody, like I know what, I'm not an expert. I haven't gone to school for this, but I went through it and I'm still going through it. I battle this battle every day. And I like to think to myself that I'm winning just for the way that I'm living and I'm acting and I'm behaving. I know that all of our coaches in our organization and all of our staff members in our organization are more than willing to sit down and help you through any problem that you have.
Well, Greg, I appreciate you sharing your story today. I did kind of want to leave you a final opportunity to wrap things up and, just kind of speak about what we've talked about today. So you're on call last.
I'm on call last. Like I kind of said at the beginning, just try and stay neutral. Avoid the negative situation, avoid the negative people, avoid the negative thinking. I'm not necessarily telling you that you have to think positively all the time because it's not easy. I'm saying stay neutral. you know, the negativity is what I call a distraction. So I say starve your distraction and feed your focus. What are you wanting? Focus on what's important. Think about those people by your bedside. Think about the blessings that you have in your life. Think about the good, because there is more good than there is bad in your life. I think choice, making a choice, is an illusion, because we know right from wrong. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. Ultimately, we mostly choose what's wrong. I'm telling you to choose what's right. And I think that living your life is the right choice.
So with that, folks, I hope everybody enjoyed the podcast today. Greg Kahler and Rich Winter kind of talking about things that people don't often talk about, and certainly going forward, Sacred Hoops has made a commitment to continue to provide avenues for people should they need someone to talk to. I think we've got a high school roundtable coming up sometime soon where we're going to visit with some other athletes. So, Greg, I appreciate you sharing your story with us today, sir.
Thanks, Rich.